Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast. My name's Gavin Berry, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined this week by Andy Newport and Douglas Dickie. How are you both?
Very well. Thanks, Gavin.
Andy?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you couldn't be bothered coming out of the office.
No, it's a bit too much to make it in for Paisley, so I thought I'd just stay
Don't
here.
worry. Don't worry. I know you've been beavering away this morning, so we can read that tomorrow or maybe even later online. You never stop, do you?
No, never, ever. Unlike Scott McDermott, who's off again this week.
Oh, swanning away again? Yeah,
Yes.
boy, he's got some air miles, that guy, hasn't he?
Away with Scotland, would you believe? But there we go.
Unbelievable. Well, we'll start. Transfer window obviously closed. Slammed shut? All slammed shut. Slammed shut. It didn't close. Closed for business on 11 o'clock on Monday. Andy, you were out. You're working late. In fact, no, Scott was working very late, wasn't he?
I managed to dodge that. I managed to get the early shift. So a couple of wee bits about Nico Raskin, and then that was me.
He the graveyard
Shut the laptop on. Get Jim White on. I managed to watch the rest of Sky Sports News. He's not on it anymore, is he? No, so it's...
No, your yellow tie.
Yeah, oh well.
But anyway, Andy, 14 new arrivals in total, yeah? Four on loan.
I had 13. That included Cortez, but maybe your math's better than me. But listen,
Okay.
an absolute influx.
Well, listen, it is an influx. Well, I mean, we can go into individuals later on, but just overall, to both of you, start with you, Andy. Rate it out of 10 overall, the business.
I think you've got to go. It's the jury's firmly out on so many of the guys still. So I mean, I think right now you're sitting there going, out of 10, 5 so far, because it's just the start to the season has been pretty woeful. In frankness, obviously, handing Celtic a 6-point head start 3-4 games into the season. Some pretty insipid performances, and then the humiliation of all humiliations in Europe, up there with the worst the club's ever suffered. So, there's a lot of work to be done. Obviously, Russell Martin is still clinging to his job by the sharp end of his fingernails. He's got a huge job to turn around. The opinion of the fan base. 99% of whom, from what I can see, have already made their minds up and have decided he's not the man to take the club forward. Obviously, the board are standing by him. That's to be expected on the basis that Kevin Thelwell, Patrick Stewart, this is the guy that they've put their faith in on behalf of the club's new American owners. It wouldn't say much for them if they're having to dispense with a manager, a matter of weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks into a new season, in a new regime. So they're obviously standing by him. They're determined to give him as much support as they can. But there's 3 home games coming up, and we all know the electrifying power that Ibrox can have on a Rangers team when it's doing well. But the opposite can take place when a team's struggling. It can be a toxic, horrific, horrible atmosphere at times. And I think Russell Martin must have been breathing a huge sigh of relief that his team didn't go behind on Sunday against Celtic, because I think had that happened, you would have seen some pretty ugly scenes. I think he would have got it from all 4 stands at Ibrox. I think the punters wouldn't be shy and tell him what they thought of him. So he's bought himself a little bit of time over the international break, which is going to be crucial, because that's been his big complaint so far, is that he's the heavy fixture schedule since he's come in. He's not had that time in the training ground to get the players drilled into his way of thinking, his way of playing. So he's now got that. Obviously, a few of the guys are away in international duty, but this is his big chance to sort of really zero in on the things that he wants the team to be doing better. And he has to get a result against Hearts when the teams come back from the international break. If they lose that game, they go 9 points behind. Not just Celtic if they were to win their game, but 9 points behind Hearts.
I know, it seems to be
that's a remarkable situation for a Rangers manager to be in 5 games into the season. So listen, this is I think for me, I thought the Old Firm game was certainly a must not lose. I think the game's a must win for him.
Must win, yeah. Sorry, Andy, just to be
clear, since 1983. So if he was to drop more points, then I just don't see how anyway back for him.
No, sorry, just to be clear, Andy, when I said it, I was saying to rate out of 10, I was meaning the transfer window in the business. So when you say 5, is that what you mean as opposed to the start to the season? I'm talking about the actual window.
Well, I mean, it's hard to know because, I mean, some of these guys might come good.
Yeah.
Some of them, I mean, we've yet to see obviously a Chermiti, we've yet to see a Cornelius on the side and what difference they'll make.
But on paper, the business, I mean, across the city, Celtic fans are, you know, they're raging with the board and the lack of activity. So you can only go and
we can only judge
the money spent and everything. You know, it's better than a 5, surely, in terms of the intent.
I don't know, because you're 6 points behind the title race and you've just had your joint worst ever result. I mean, how can you judge it any more than that? I mean,
okay.
You tell me, what do you give it then?
I would have said a 7 at least. Well, look, no, but that's
you've got Max Arns. You've got Max Arns who's come in and has absolutely flopped so far. Same for Joe Rothwell. You've got
going to spend £8 million
who's come in, cost some debate over the figures. The club insists it's £2.5 million. There's other people that say it's more than that. Doesn't look anywhere near the standard so far.
Yeah,
you know, Gisama's looked okay. Yeah, I'll give him that. Mayovsky, too early to tell.
Well, you're thinking more of you're thinking of the 2 that came in sort of late on. They're the more, and then your Cornelius is sort of 3 that came at very late in the window. You know, on top of the others.
Yeah, I think the final few days of the transfer window will have at least given some of the supporters scope for optimism. Mm-hmm. Then we said that at the start of the summer with the takeover. We said that at the start of the summer with even the appointment of Martin. You're always looking for a new manager bounce, even if it is in the summer. It hasn't happened. So I don't think there's any. I think it's just far too early to be making any sort of conclusions about transfer windows. I mean, to be fair, you know, Michael Beale got a hard time for his transfer window, and to an extent, rightly so. But some of the guys that he signed have turned out to be the worst signings. You know, Cyril Dessers get pelters early doors, and I think a lot of people are now looking at him having left going, actually, was he as bad as he made out? Not as he certainly wasn't the disaster that was the picture that was painted in some quarters early on. Obviously not. You know, if he'd scored every chance he was put in front of him, they walked off 100 goals. He walks off out of 2 seasons with basically just over 50 goals for the club, which isn't bad. You know, you think of Jack Butland. Okay, he's had a poor season last season, but the year before that was great, and the start of this season great. I mean, what I'm saying is that you can only really judge a transfer window at the end of a season.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, we need.
Yeah,
now, Andy. You know what?
We need
that. Douglas, one thing I was going to say was, could they have done with a left back, another left back? I mean, they lost 3. Well, that was hefty. Yilmaz and even Robbie Fraser leaves, and they just bring in Jayden Magoma. I know Derek Cornelius can play left back, but he's more of a central defender. Were you a wee bit surprised among all the signings that they didn't bring in another left back?
Yeah, a bit. I don't know if you feel Max Aarons can play there. We know he's played there. He's not done a particularly good.
No, we know he can't.
Good job of it. I mean, I went through after the game on Sunday. We were chatting away, me and my mates, and I feel we're still 6 or 7 starters short of where we need to be.
So they spent almost 30 million. I think still.
I mean, massive caveat. It's, you know, we're only 4 games into the domestic season.
Yeah.
But with Russell Martin, when Martin came in, there was all these red flags for me, and every single one of them has come true about him. But in some ways, I'm not as disappointed with Martin because I kind of saw it playing out. Maybe not quite this bad, but I didn't think he was a man then.
Okay.
I don't think he's a man now. But the biggest disappointment for me has been recruitment, because when the takeover happened, what excited me the most was I felt we would kind of drop our reliant on middle of the road championship level players, on players who guys have worked with before, and yet it appears to be this transfer window. And I do kind of understand that it's the first summer, you know, of the new owners being in. There was always going to be a big turnaround. Not as big a turnaround as I like. I suddenly remembered last night that Rabbi Matondo is still a Rangers player, taking a 5-figure sum off the club every week, but that's maybe a different a different discussion for another day. But you look at the guys we've signed: Rothwell, Championship level; Aarons, Championship level; Asgard, it's still early days.
I do think that's harsh. I mean, Aaron's in the sense, I think he's had a poor start. But this guy's got 100 Premier League appearances under his belt. I mean, maybe he's not playing that at this time, but he has got 100 Championship. And in Rothwell, okay, Championship level, but he won the league with Leeds last season. He was one of the key men. I just think these guys have, whether or not they're the best suited to playing up here, whether or not they're mentally suited to playing up here, I think that's the more pressing question. But in terms of their quality or the pedigree that they've had, I can understand why Russell Martin and Thirlwell went for them. It's whether or not they've been able to achieve that, though.
I mean, and it is, I do say it is early doors. The Rothwell one, I remember there was a bit of a kick up when he arrived, and the BBC illustrated his signing with a clip of him knocking a free kick 50 yards out the park. From what we've seen so far, I'm beginning to wonder if that was genuinely the best clip they could find off him. But but they've been very, 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 very disappointing. It is early doors, but they look. I've got a bit of bugbear about the Championship. I think the Championship's possibly the most overrated league in Europe. People see it, and I think they think that if you've been a success in the Championship, then you're automatically going to be a success in the SPFL. And yet, the last few years are littered with players who've shone in the Championship and came up here and couldn't handle it. Now, there are gems to be found. Gassama looks a player, although, like a few players, the longer he kind of works with the current coaching structure, the worse he seems to get. Celtic signed Matt O'Reilly from the lower leagues in England. There are gems out there, but it just feels like we haven't changed that kind of MO of going for guys.
Cantwell,
guys who people know from the past, rather than using that kind of statistical basis that we were all kind of promised. It's the same with the boy from Everton. It's obviously a player Thelwell have known.
Of course.
It's a massive outlay for a guy who's not scored a great deal of goals at the top level.
No goals in 2 years, not even an assist.
So, I mean, that is, for me, an absolutely bonkers risk. The boy Moore from Tottenham, I'm not a big fan of us developing other clubs' players. I don't actually mind the loan market that much. I think it does have its place, but right now, I mean, was it two? It could have been if Aarons had played on Sunday. 3 year starting back four loan signings. We're going to be heavily reliant on guys who won't be here again next season, and it's not. For me, I don't think it's a great. It's not a great situation to be in, especially when we already find ourselves 6 points behind in the title chase.
I mean, Andy, Chermiti is, that is the big one. Big fee. If you'd said at the start of the window, Rangers will spend 8 million, possibly rising to 10 on a striker, I don't think you would have expected an unproven 21-year-old. But I don't want to give too much away, but you have been speaking to people who know him, who maybe even worked with him. Is there maybe more to it? When I look at Everton fans' reaction, it seems to be, I saw somebody describing him as an if player. If Everton had been a bit more stable and hadn't changed managers often, if he didn't get an injury, a lot of them actually were saying that they were a bit disappointed to see him go. Although, granted, they are split on it, but a lot of them seem to think that he could come good. Rangers spent 7 million on Ryan Kent. Had he done more really in his career at that time? I know he had the loan spell obviously before Rangers turned it into a permanent move, but had he really done that much more than him?
Well, obviously, I think he'd had a number of loans. He'd been to Germany. I think he'd been to Barnsley before that. I've got a recollection of playing with Bristol. Sorry, and he's. And obviously the year up here was what convinced Rangers to go out and spend that money. They'd seen enough of him in that first season. Listen, for me, as you say, I've been speaking to a few folk down the Merseyside about him, and it is along those lines that he's been a player who's suffered through circumstance. He's joined they had a big hopes from him when he signed for Everton from Sporting Lisbon. He was a wee bit lightweight. He's tall. I think he's quite 6'4". They felt they had to sort of beef him up for the Premier League, get him a wee bit more brawn about him. So that took a wee bit of time, obviously, just to spend some time in the gym, just bulking him up for the game, for the level of the game down there. But then when he's joined a team that's struggling in the Premier League, fighting for its life at the bottom at times, and at that point, you're not really going to chuck an untested striker into the toughest league in the world. So because of that, because of the circumstances the club found themselves in, somebody said to me today, there's a lot of turmoil on and off the pitch, and then obviously Kevin Thelwell signed him, and I'm thinking, that sounds very familiar to him. What he's walking into up here. So, listen, the vibes I got from were that he's not the kind of, it's not the total punt that some people are painting it out to be, myself included, I suppose. That this is like Kevin Thelwell. I've seen enough of him to think that he can be a success up here, but I think there's no doubt that Thelwell is staking his reputation in this. This is a signing. If it doesn't go well, as you say, the idea that Rangers might have £8 million to spend on one single player, that seemed fanciful 12 months ago. That it really appeared 12 months ago that those kind of days were numbered. Obviously, the takeover has changed that. So I still don't think many people would have expected to see Rangers paying that amount of money for one single player.
No.
But then the surprise is that you go and spend that in the league where there is, the going rate is so high for so little. You can spend £8 million and get the best player lately in the Czech Republic, or the best player in Poland, or the best player in Croatia, and get so much more value for money, or certainly a lot more evidence to suggest what you're buying it can be backed up. But to go to England and buy basically a reserve striker for £8 million, listen, this guy might turn out to be an absolute gem. There's no evidence to suggest that, or there's very little evidence, I should say, sorry. Whereas if you were to go to a smaller market, a smaller league, and invest the same amount of money, you would be confident you would be getting somebody at least with a track record, or you had a track record to point to. So, this guy's basically been playing under 23s football for the last 2 years. He's had an injury as well, which is on his development. But I just think there's, as I say, that this is a deal that has to go well for Kevin Thelwell. I think his judgment, the way the signings have gone, the way the start of the season has gone, the way Russell Martin has gone, there are already people now questioning his judgment. It's not just Russell Martin that's under pressure now. It's him and Patrick Stewart. They are the people that put Russell Martin in place and have trusted him to take the club forward. And it's been Kevin Thelwell who's been driving the recruitment structure and the recruitment policy. So if this doesn't go well, it's not just Russell Martin. It's going to be feeling it. It's going to be Kevin Thelwell as well.
I think that's the point I was trying to make earlier about the recruitment and how I thought it would go down with the new owners, and this deal seems to be completely at odds with what we expected. We expected kind of going for value, hidden gems that maybe weren't being picked up elsewhere, to just spend so much money on a guy who it feels like the only reason we're doing it is because he's worked with Thelwell before. I think is massive alarm bells ringing on that. So
that used to be the complaint of the old regime in terms of they would go for the easy option. You think about when, going back to Steven Gerrard leaves the club, they're going to appoint Gio Van Bronckhorst. Well, he was an ex-player, so it's kind of obvious. Then when Van Bronckhorst leaves the club, they go and get Mick Beale, Gerrard's old assistant. When they needed a new chief exec, they just went next door at the marketing director's office and get James Bisgrove in to do it. When they needed a transfer list under Mick Beale, he just dusted down the one that him and Gerrard had years previously, and the targets hadn't got. Then there was a lack of ambition or imagination when it came to signing. It was just there's something we've had before, we'll just dust that one down again, or here's the contingency plan. That it was the easy option. Whereas I must admit, again, when you're signing, when like Mike Homer coming in, it's because Martin's worked for him before at Southampton. You know, Aaron's coming in because he's a former teammate of, you know, Martin at Norwich, and now obviously Chermiti coming in because Kevin Thelwell was the guy who signed him before, and whether he still thinks he's there's a player there, but again, as you say, the £8 million is the real sticking point. The punters are just a bit concerned that is a lot of money, as I say, to be spent on somebody that doesn't have much of a CV to back it up.
You could say the same about Miovski, someone who was obviously known. You know, people would maybe say that was lazy, but well, we know how well he done in the Premiership. But what I was going to ask you specifically was, I mean, he's not cheap either. He's not be 8 million, but you're not going to pay that money to sit someone like Miovski on the bench. How does he fit them both in? I mean, actually, me and Andy were talking a wee bit yesterday about how they could possibly line up, and I think we managed to fit them in. What was the formation, Andy? 3-4-1-2 or something like that?
I mean, if maybe a 3-5-2 or a. I mean,
do you think they'll go with two up front?
I do wonder that the most interesting thing is that we've come up with three at the back, and I have wondered, you know, if the lack of left back might indicate that that's a route we might go down. But
and just having Gassama and Antman as wing backs.
Well, potentially Antman, you know, another guy who for me hasn't done enough since he came in. Again, early doors, no massive caveat to all this.
Yeah,
we're still early.
Do you think you'll fit the two in together?
Potentially, yeah. I think Gassama will play.
Sorry, I meant Miovski.
All right, sorry, Miovski. Yeah, well, like you know, it was an awful lot of money on Miovski, a guy whose goal scoring record away from Scotland isn't that great, but at least he has a body of evidence behind him.
Yeah.
To suggest that he can do it at, you know, in the SPFL. To be honest, it's not something I'd really thought of until yesterday when you kind of mentioned it to me, whether he'd play the two of them, because he seems pretty wedded to this kind of 4-3-3. I would like to see us try something different, even if having the two of them on it might help beef up the midfield a bit if we can get an extra man in midfield.
And it may be something they just do domestically. It may be something they just do domestically, Andy. That's what we're saying here. So maybe not Europe, but
I just think there's no doubt you're going to spend £8 million on a player.
Oh no way!
No.
The one thing you can guarantee is that Chermiti's come here to play. From what I'm told, Majovski's, you know, okay, the fee was at 2.3, 2.6, is it something rising?
Yeah, rising to force. Yeah.
But, so I mean, obviously, you're saying a guy that's just been in La Liga. His wages are going to be pretty substantial. You can believe that as well. So again, he's going to be a pretty hefty wage. Is he come here to sit on the bench? I'm not so sure. I think the indications are that you'll find a way of getting the two of them in. I totally agree. I think the fact that they've not went and got another left back in leads me to think that maybe playing an out-and-out left back isn't a concern for them. You know, if Big Coma gets injured, obviously you could play Cornelius there. But again, does Russell Martin's style of play really involved playing centre backs out of position and key? You know, we've seen how important the full back area is to hit the way he wants to set up. So, you know, I think we could see a change. I think it would maybe solve a lot of problems. I think it would take the pressure off of, say, like an Aarons, who looks like he's been vulnerable at times. I think if he had an extra centre back inside him, as they say, it would allow you to keep the three in midfield. Yeah, it puts a lot of onus on who your wing backs are, but I think Gassama's certainly got an engine that would suggest he can go up and down. I agree with Douglas. I'm not sure Antman's proved himself in glory apart from his debut. Defensively, doesn't look the most switched on as we saw in Bruges, where he was at fault for the first goal. Totally switched off as the ball get played down his line. So I wonder if that's a way that Russell Martin's thinking could help solidify and get some more bodies into the spine of that team, because that is where Rangers have been ripped apart this season. Whenever they've turned the ball over on transition, you could drive not just a bus through that Rangers midfield and defence. You could drive a fleet of buses through them. They've been so wide open, so vulnerable, so easy to get at that. Obviously, you saw that at the weekend. He sort of switched to a sort of two sitters and one ahead, having been the other way about. And that did seem to make a difference, albeit Celtic were utterly toothless, as were Rangers, to be fair. But that certainly did seem to nullify some of the the mistakes that they've been making when they've been turning the ball over, they weren't as wide open as we've seen this season. So I just wonder if that's maybe a way of thinking, if we can get 3 centre-backs in there and at least keep another midfielder in the sort of deeper position, that would make them look a wee bit more solid. As I say, it will put a lot of pressure on the wing-backs to go up and down, provide that width. But if you've got 2 strikers in the box, then you've got every incentive to get forward and deliver balls. And I think that's been another issue. Just I don't think there's been times of Rangers with enough people in the box to attack. To get that. So maybe that's something. Listen, when you turn up on Saturday and against Hearts next week, it'll be the same as, and Chimetti's on the bench and
Danilo up front.
So let's just finish off Douglas. Final topic. Both of you we can't go without talking about Nico Raskin. He's bombed out, Belgian international. We were talking about, towards the end of last season, will he be sold, and the different fees that they could command. Some saying up to 20 million, 10. Either way, he's been described. Neil McCann, I think, said certainly Rangers' best midfielder. No place in the team against Celtic. He goes away in the international break. The transfer window closes, and he's still here. How does this one play out?
Well, you'd like to.
It had you last season, actually, isn't it?
Well, similar.
I
would like to think it plays out with him being reintegrated back into the squad.
Okay.
He's a Rangers player. We should use him. I think we could have done with him on Sunday. My own personal opinion is we should have been looking to sell Raskin this window. That window just passed. His value is only going to go one way unless he signs a new contract, and I don't think he's going to do that.
No.
But now that he's here, I just felt he really could have made a difference on Sunday. I don't think he's quite as good as he thinks he is as a football player. I don't think he's as good as some of your fans think as well. I don't think he's good enough to play number 6 for Rangers. I think he's much more effective further forward. I think that's where, and I think this is where the problem lies for him. I think he sees his future as this kind of deep-sitting midfielder who gets to control games. I don't think he does control games. I think he's much more effective at the turnover, when the ball's loose and he can win the ball high up the park. I think he's also got an eye for goal, which he's proven. But hopefully, him and Russell Martin can sit down and sort something out. Otherwise, we've got a very expensive player sitting training with the reserves or whatever. I find it hard to believe that something didn't get maybe sorted out on Monday, and that's why he is still here. I certainly hope so. I think Raskin as well, he's got a spiky character. Neil McCann alluded to it.
I was intrigued by that, yeah.
And if memory serves me correct, Andy, you might remember this more than me. I think he had some issues at his old club as well to try and force him move to Rangers.
He never played for about 2 or 3 months before he signed for Rangers because he had a sort of contractual dispute.
So he's obviously someone who fights his corner, and maybe Martin's not like that. He's someone, but I do think that I really hope we can get him in because number one, he's our best midfielder, and number two, our midfield is weak. Is really weak. And in Scottish football, especially, midfield's where you win and lose the league. You can have the best defence in the world. You can have £10 million worth of strikers sitting up front, but if you can't link the two of them, what's the point? And Raskin's a great link between them.
Andy, I know you're high maintenance with your boss, so he's always telling me, you're always giving a bit back and you can't take a telling. So when I was listening,
especially when I have to deal with you, I have to phone that Berry again.
I know you're always snapping back and you're asking questions. Why are we doing it this way? Which is what Neil McCann was talking about. But in all seriousness, if he is a bit like that, and Russell Martin thought, I can't be dealing with this. If he now welcomes him back in, is it going to be tough? Is it going to be seen as weak management on his part, or can you see a resolution where everybody's a winner?
Well, I think there has to be a resolution because I think there's one. You've got far too good a player to be sitting on the bench, and Nico Raskin. He's, for me, he's still Rangers' best player. So the idea of him being, left out of the squad for the remainder of the season or until January just seems ludicrous. He's also Rangers' biggest asset as things stand, so they need to get him back playing and playing well. even if they want to sell him, he has to play, and as I say, he has to play well. But for Raskin's point of view, he's got a World Cup to be aiming for. He can't afford to be waiting. I mean, even if he leaves in January, you know, there's obviously World Cup qualifiers coming up over the next few months. If he allows somebody else to get into that Belgian squad and cement their place, then from his point of view, it could be disastrous for his World Cup ambitions. So what I'm told, having spoken to people that know him, is that he doesn't want to leave. He's determined to stay. He likes it at Rangers. He loves it at Rangers. He wants to be a Rangers player. He wants to see out his contract. I'm even told he'd be happy to sign a new contract under the right conditions. And you know, but he also knows that he's probably going to have to eat some humble pie in a sense. You know, listen, what we've heard from Barry Ferguson, from Neil McCann, from Billy Dodds, is they all said he's an opinionated guy. He asks questions. He questions everything. The way Barry Ferguson explains that, he said he'd never had any. He said that last week in his column last week. He had no issue with that because if he felt it was Nico's attempt to understand and get his head around what was being asked of him, and if he could explain it to him in the right way, then he would go out and deliver on that. And I think you saw that last season: goals, performances, assists. He delivered all of them in spades towards the end of the season under Barry Ferguson. So, yeah, he's a difficult character at times, but I think that's down to Russell Martin to handle that. But the idea that Russell Martin can just dispense with Rangers' best player and potentially drive down his value, I think that's a nonsense. He has to. We're all told that Russell Martin is this great man manager. Joe Rothwell spoke about that before he arrived. Well, so far we've already seen he's had a bust up with Hamza Gamani that's seen him refuse to come off the bench in a crucial game where Rangers are desperate for firepower. And now he's had another bust up with the club's other biggest assets. So for me, I think the pressure's more on Russell Martin to come out.
Well, I think that was the case. I think that was the case we had, wasn't it? Did someone not end up intervening and getting the two of them together and saying, look, we need to stop it?
Coleman obviously had his issues as well. You think back to Todd Cantwell, and Todd Cantwell who's been pushed out as this disruptive character, is now captain of Blackburn. So listen, I think there's going to need some adults in the room. It's going to take both sides to show a wee bit of humility and you know, to agree to work together. But from what I'm told, Nico Raskin is prepared to do it. He realises that he might need to, as I say, eat some humble pie. But I think there will be a way forward with this, because it's simply the alternative is Nico Raskin sits on the bench for the remainder of the season or sits in the stand, and Rangers lose out financially and their prized asset, and he potentially will miss out in the World Cup. So that just won't happen. There will be a consensus reached somehow.
Great stuff. Andy, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Douglas, as always. Thanks for listening, everyone. Domestic football takes a break, but we never stop here at the Record Rangers podcast, unless you're Scott McDermott, who's swanning off around the continent. If you catch us on all the usual outlets, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, if you like us, leave a review. If you don't bother. But thanks, Andy. Thanks, Douglas. And we'll maybe see you next week. Thank you. Guys. Bye.